Because you're an atheist, right? Is that right?
I don't use the title because if I said it, people then assume things about me to be true that are not.
Okay.
And so I realize I have to put some distance between me. But I find myself unconvinced by any God that has been described to me as being in charge of anything.
So how do you think we all got here? How did it all start?
Well, I follow the lines of scientific evidence, and we know about evolution. We know about genetic commonality among all life forms on Earth, plant and animal, and fungal. And so this comes to us from very hard work invested in the biological sciences. You add some of that to the geology and astrophysics of the early solar system, and we go from raw ingredients drawn from the periodic table of elements forged in the hearts of stars that are everywhere in the universe, by the way, the ingredients of life, hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, that they're the most common ingredients in the universe. And for life to be based on them, it tells you that life is highly opportunistic. And in the early Earth, we went from organic molecules to self-replicating life. We still don't know how that happened. That's a biological frontier with top people
So
working
what was
on
this?
it.
Here's my
Other
question.
things, we don't know what was around.
Here's my question for you. If I was Merlin, this is what I'd be asking, right? Let's assume you're Merlin for a moment. Merlin, what was there before nothing?
We don't know.
Right. So here's
it's
my
okay
point.
to not know. That's the whole point of science.
No, but
the whole point of science is go where you don't know the answer.
That's why I believe in God, because there has to be a superior thing out there which can answer that question. The human brain cannot answer it because they can't, because nobody knows the answer. Therefore, there has to be, does there not, logically, a superior thing which can answer that question?
Yeah, so that's not an invocation of logic. That's an invocation of what philosophers have historically called the God of the gaps. The God of the gaps is, you look at where science has yet to tread, where science has yet to figure out, and you say, wow, that's mysterious. I don't know how that works. God must have done it. And by the way, for you to feel this way, there's a long, storied history of people thinking this way. Let's go back to AD 150, Claudius Ptolemy. Brilliant Alexandrian mathematician, polymath. He wrote in the margin of one of his greatest works, he said, after looking at the planets going back and forth, not fully understanding why they did this, and he writes, when I trace at my pleasure the windings to and fro of the heavenly bodies, I no longer touch earth with my feet. I stand in the presence of Zeus himself and take my fill of ambrosia. He was feeling it, okay? He's invoking religion. It's a beautiful, it's one of my favorite quotes ever, by the way, because it's so honest and so mysterious and so curious. And what I'm saying here is, he did not understand the planets and he invokes deity to help him out. That's what you just did, but on a different frontier, because we know why the planets go back and forth. Newton got that figured out, and Kepler. So if, to you, God is where science has yet to tread, then God is an ever-receding pocket of scientific ignorance.
I want to end with just a funny thing. That's a great answer, by the way. It's terrible, but it's a great answer.
So in the chapter Truth and Beauty, I spent a fair amount of time evaluating what the meaning of truth is, especially as different people interpret it. And one branch of that would be a personal truth, let's say. And this is like, let's say, Jesus is your savior, right? In a free country where we have freedom of religious expression, no one is going to take that from you. That's a personal truth. But if you want to have other people agree with that truth, and they might have a different savior or a different religious tradition, then it will require some serious act of persuasion, but in the limit, as we've seen in the history of civilization, outright warfare and bloodshed and death. So in a pluralistic society, your personal truths really need to be kept to yourself, or casually attempting to influence others.
The 10 burning questions about the universe, rapid fires. Here we go. What was there before the beginning of the universe? Everyone asks this question. What's the simple answer?
Oh, I'm delighted I can respond to you. We don't know. but we got top people working on it. Okay.
You know what?
There may have been a multiverse.
I like that. I like the honesty. So we genuinely don't know. People just don't know, right?
We don't know. There might have been a multiverse that's birthing universes, and we're one of them. But that just pushes the question one step further before that. What was around before the multiverse? So we just don't know. It's a frontier question right now.
Now, I know you're an avowed atheist. How can you be so certain that there is no supernatural, godlike entity out there, given that we know so little?
Well, first, I don't count myself among the ranks of avowed atheists. And I'll give a fast example why. A friend of mine went up to fix the Hubble telescope, okay, on the space shuttle. And on my Facebook feed, I said, Godspeed to the space shuttle astronauts. And then in the comment thread, it said, I thought you were an atheist. How could you possibly say that? And so the fact that I gleefully said that and atheists complained about it, clearly I'm not an atheist. Okay?
What are you?
My favorite Broadway musical of all time is Jesus Christ Superstar, which I saw in real time in New York City. I don't know that atheists can, so I don't.
So is there a God then, Neil deGrasse Tyson? I'll be about to have breaking news.
I don't know.
Is there a God?
Okay, so what I will tell you is that there are a lot of unknowns in the universe, but just because there are unknowns does not mean there's a deity in the unknown. If you're going to assign a deity to that which... It doesn't mean there isn't, that's correct.
So you're more of an open mind about this, right?
Everyone should. If the unknown is the unknown. But the track record of people saying God is behind this, and then you add a little science to it and you find out, no, we can completely explain it and control it, then the history of that exercise is so rich with science discovering the unknowns that were previously ascribed to deity, like lightning bolts and weather systems. There was Poseidon, there was Zeus, just look at the history of this. I'm not given reason to say, we're gonna find something, God is gonna be at the center of that, and there'll be no science to apply. I'm gonna look for the science first, because that's how the history of this exercise has unfolded.
Welcome back. In this video, we took a look at this interview between broadcast journalist Piers Morgan and Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is an astrophysicist. So the interview began when Piers Morgan claimed or said that Neil deGrasse Tyson is an atheist, and he partially debunks this by saying that he is not convinced by any God that has been described to him. So he did not fully debunk it, neither did he wholly accept it as well. He says that he doesn't want to identify as such, so that people will believe or think things about him that are not exactly so. He goes by science and things that has been discovered to be true in the universe. So if there are any things that can be backed by science, he will believe in. But to what he has known so far, according to him, he has not seen anything convincing about any God that has been described to him. Now, Piers Morgan goes on to ask this difficult question: what was there before nothing? And I believe that this was the kind of question that he thought that Neil deGrasse Tyson was going to find it very difficult to answer, because if you ask anyone what was there before nothing, it will be very difficult for any scientist to bring anything convincing as to what was there before nothing. But Neil deGrasse Tyson went on to say that we do not know. And then Piers Morgan goes to say that since we do not know, then it means that there is some force of higher intelligence that might have some information that we do not have. So that means that there may be a God out there. And that is where Neil deGrasse Tyson comes in there, that this is not an evocation of logic, but this is an invocation of the God of the gaps. Now, throughout scientific discoveries, there is this invocation known as the God of the gaps, where most of the things that cannot be explained by science, people leave it as though maybe it's some form of a God that is controlling that. There has been a lot of scenarios which he clearly explained in the video that we used to think that it was God that was causing such phenomenon, but after further studies, science was able to uncover whatever was causing things like that. So phenomena such as tender was ascribed to a god. Meanwhile, it is not so. After further studies and discoveries from science, we have now been able to discover where and how tender is formed. Also, the disease epilepsy was also thought to be some kind of a god that causes that. Meanwhile, science have been able to prove all this scientifically, and so this goes clearly to show that if something cannot be explained, that does not mean that it is attributed to a god. And Piers Morgan says that also does not mean that there isn't God, but clearly that is also true, that does not mean that there isn't any God too as well, but that also does not show that there is God. So clearly he cannot come up with the fact that not being able to explain what or tell what was there before nothing shows that it was a God in that equation or a God in that situation. Let me know what you also think about all these in the comment section below. Share your general thoughts and opinions about both ideas shared by Piers Morgan and deGrasse Tyson, the astrophysicist. Also share this video with your friends and your family on other social media platforms like WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, and other social media platforms. Also, don't forget to subscribe to their channel. Just to hit the subscribe button down here, click on the subscribe button, click also on the notification bell, and I'd like to see you again in my next video.